Fields and formatting options. One of the things I'm going to point out for you is that as you're creating your tables in the PDF, when you're prepping it for export to Excel, you have the ability to name your tables. So you want to make sure that you do that, because there are going to be other places and other options that we're going to be looking at where it's going to be very helpful to have a table named, because you're not necessarily going to remember that table number 3 refers to the checks section of the bank statement. So really important to follow along with this stuff. And I'm going to remind you once again that if you haven't already, get a sample set of PDFs to work with, download at least a trial version of PDF2XL so that you can follow along with everything I'm doing as I go through things in this course. Let's go ahead and see what this looks like. As I mentioned in the last lesson, the first page is frequently, if not almost always, going to be different from the rest of the statement. And oftentimes the last page is too. So in your Home tab, right here in PDF2XL, you want to make sure that you've got these options checked off here, first and last page different, right? And that will make sure that, and if you have all pages same checked off here, that will make sure that the first and last pages actually do get treated separately. Otherwise, what happens is when you set up your tables, notice what it did when I made that change to all pages same on the second page, it copied over. So it's thinking that I have my electronic deposits. It's assuming you have the identical layout page by page. So if I choose pages different, it no longer will do that, but now of course I'm left with this layout. So in case you get stuck on something like this, just select the page that I've got, for example, here, and choose clear layout here, and it'll clear out just that page. So depending on how your statement's laid out, you want to spend a minute in this section and make some decisions about what you should do. There's also the layout tab, which you should pay attention to, and notice it's got a lot of the same options and then a few more. So let's say that as I export this into Excel, I'm going to want the account summary information because it's going to help me reconcile later, right? So we're going to just click and drag over the summary section. And notice what it does initially. In the preview, you can see that it kind of just dumps everything into a single column. One of the things that's great about the way PDF2XL works, as you've probably already started to see, when it structures the table around the section that you've highlighted, it's very easy to move the borders around or even right-click in there to create a new split. For that matter, you can rearrange the header section, and as you're no doubt starting to see, you can also easily rename the columns and do some other things that make it really easy for you as you're prepping the PDF file for export to identify what goes where and make sure that you can get as close as possible before export to minimize the amount of cleanup required in Excel once you do perform the final export. So just as we saw earlier, I'm going to right-click here and I'm going to choose Split here. Right, because that's going to get me my amounts in a separate column, and notice it conforms to that here. Another thing you can do is you can look in terms of how it's defining where the different rows are. For example, and I don't know why you'd necessarily want to do this, but if I right-click here and I go to Table Structure, and you have some choices here where it says Rows from Text, Rows from Lines. Let's say I choose Rows from Lines. Notice what it does. It consolidates everything here. Right, now in this case, that's not really what we want, but I want you to be aware of this option because there may be times when it is. So I'm going to go back to Table Structure and go back to Rows from Text. Right, and that means PDF2XL is going to look at where the text is, and based on that, it's going to determine where one row starts and another one ends, or vice versa, where one row ends and another one starts. And so now we've got our summary. So this is Table 1, and let's right-click and edit the table title and call it Summary. And let's try and spell that correctly. That's the greatest challenge. Now I want to talk to you about one other thing. We can format this. So this column is numeric in formatting, right? So I'm going to right-click, and we're going to go to Column Format Output. And you can choose currency. I just prefer number. So, and you can see that it's going to do that for me. Note it denotes it here, that it's going to be number formatted. Then we go to the next page, and I have to redo this table real quick. This is my other withdrawals, if you recall. And we're going to right-click and edit the table title and call it Other Withdrawals. I'm going through withdrawal. So that takes care of that part. And now we have this we don't need, we don't care about. This is set up fine, but here's what we want to do now. We're going to go back, and we're going to start formatting things because I'd rather format it here so that it comes out right. The other thing is, this is a nice clean PDF, so it works well, but what I've learned in working with Lior, who owns the company who creates this software, is that the more you can format the output, the more likely it is that PDF2XL will read stuff properly. Like, for example, it won't, it might read a PDF and it might mistake a 0 for an O, but if I tell it to format this, for a numeric format, then it's going to know that it's going to sort of err on the side of a 0 rather than an O. So we're going to format all this. So I've got my amounts go in as numbers, and my dates go in as dates. And you're going to do that for each section. Number, here's another date. And another amount. Another number. All right, I'm going to pause the recording. I'm not going to make you sit here and watch me do this for everything. Okay, so I've gone through and formatted everything. And with that, we've got the entire statement done, right? This is a simple statement. And the truth is, most of your statements aren't going to have that many different sections. They may be longer, they may have more transactions, but once you've defined the section, then that's it, and it's going to work for everything every time that you are using this on that same bank statement. And here's how you make sure of that. In the layout area, you're going to choose Save. And it asks if you want to save it for everything or just the current page layout. So I'm going to say yes to save it for everything. I'm going to choose, I've already got, this is a bank statement from a bank called Comerica, so I'm going to choose that one. You can put comments in here, and I suggest that for the comments you put something indicating, whose statement exactly this layout was based on. So you can be sure if you got in another statement from another client who used Comerica and it didn't line up, you could kind of figure out what's going on there. So it asked me if I want to replace the existing one. I'm going to say yes, because this one is actually nicely formatted now with every column validated for the appropriate type of output. So now I'm ready to convert again. And I'm not going to go through the cleaning up process again in Microsoft Word. You saw how that works. That's going to work the same. But I'm ready to convert, and I'm just going to click Convert. And now we're going to get the whole entire statement. We got the account summary this time, and then we've got the rest. So we would have to do the same kind of tweaking of the columns and setup. The only thing I will show you is what I like to do on something like this is I like to have one page with the summary, and then everything else is, in the other tab. So I made a copy of the tab. We're going to delete all the rows after that. So the first sheet is the summary, and I can rename that, of course. And then on the second sheet, we're going to delete the summary so that this is just the transactions. And this is, I think, important. If you're going to include the summary, it's important to keep it on a separate tab, because as you saw in the last lesson, when we redo the layout here to get everything to line up nice, the summary is only going to get in the way, and it's not going to conform to this. So it's good to have, but it's good to have it on a separate tab. And that, my friends, is what it looks like when you've got an entire statement. So now in the next lesson, and again, get caught up with me, because in the next lesson what we're going to look at is, now that I've got this statement done and I've got the layout saved, we're going to load in the next month, and I'm going to show you how fast this is now that this has all been set up. As you can see, PDF2XL gives you some pretty robust and sophisticated options for prepping the tables that you're going to export to Excel before completing the export. I want to remind you here that the main objective of this is to get the data into Excel as quickly as possible. However, the tools that PDF2XL has provided enable us to minimize the amount of cleanup work that's going to need to be done in Excel by the time we do get to the export, because of what it allows us to do in terms of preparing for that export, as you've now just seen. Next, we're going to take a look at, based on everything you've seen already, what it looks like and how quickly it can go now that you've got a template set up for one particular bank statement type. Next, we're going to look at what it looks like and how easy it is to ready all the rest of the bank statements for export once you've already created a template for one type of bank statement.